Hello, and welcome to the video portion of our handouts for the 2021 ACES Conference in Atlanta. My name is Derek Lee, and I'm a second-year doctoral student at The Ohio State University. What you're about to watch is a video that is approximately 20 minutes in length and describes 4 projects that can be used with your students as they are working towards developing a research identity. The video captures the lived experience and descriptions from students that were involved in these activities. The course is instructed by Dr. Darcy Ha-Granello, a full professor at The Ohio State University, who also identified this need in her students and developed a course and all the activities described. Thank you for attending, and I hope that you enjoy the video.
For this project, students were asked to follow the career trajectory of a researcher. This didn't involve talking to the researcher directly, but rather looking at a researcher in the field who has at least 15 to 20 publications and has some longevity in the field, and thinking about how their scholarly contributions may have developed over time. How does the research change? How does it grow? How does it become more sophisticated? Do the topics become broader? Are they narrower? In other words, really explore what it is to, when you look at someone's CV or you look at the other information that maybe they present on their website, understanding how we don't stay the same researchers at our entire career. We move, we grow, we move into different topics, we maybe publish with different co-authors. In other words, just kind of getting this sense of the longevity of a career. When students engage in this project, tracing the career trajectory of a researcher, they get to have a better understanding about how that researcher's professional experiences and how their history informs their current research, that people don't just keep publishing brand new things, but instead that research is connected. It's connected to their past, to their history, maybe to their outside experiences, to their clinical experiences, perhaps to things that happen in the world around them. And the overall goal of this is just to look at one researcher and really understand how that person has developed over time.
Hello, my name is Mark Hamilton. I am a PhD candidate in the Counselor Education program at The Ohio State University. And today, what I'm going to be talking to you about is our assignment of understanding a research thread. So, what is a research thread? A research thread is an understanding of a topic over time, from the original conceptualization to our current understanding of the topic. Our aim in this is to understand how knowledge in our field is acquired. And in order to follow this research thread, we begin with the evolution of the idea. We begin with the original. Another aspect that we will begin to look at is the researchers that were involved in pushing this topic and really creating this topic into what it is today. Along with that, we will begin to investigate what kind of research is being conducted surrounding this topic. Is this research qualitative? Is it quantitative? This is important as it allows us to understand the results that we're going to get and sort of gives us a direction for any research that we may want to do surrounding this topic. So, one question that may come up when thinking about understanding a research thread is, are we just creating more work for ourselves? And this is something that I'm going to answer in a little bit. So, some of the main aspects that we're going to explore when understanding a research thread are the number of articles that are being published either per year or per decade. This is important as it emphasizes the growth of a topic or the decline of a topic. Along with this, we're going to identify the themes of the articles being published. Are these articles focusing on consequences of this topic? Are these articles focusing on education around this topic? Basically, the themes of these articles allow us to gain a better understanding of conceptualizations and the growth of this topic. And then making connections in the thread. Making connections in the thread is where we take the original conceptualizations and the original understandings and findings and connect them to our current understanding and how this can be implemented into our own research around this topic. So for my example, I chose to look at the evolution of work addiction. So workaholism was originally defined by Oates in 1972. In 1980 to 1990, there were actually 6 articles published and 2 books. These articles and books emphasize the findings of Oates while also including different definitions for work addiction. In 1991 to 2000, research really picks up. This is where a variety of articles are being published in multiple journals, and a variety of different topics are being covered surrounding the idea of work addiction. Then in 2000 to 2009, a variety of definitions were created. These definitions vary in all of the traits that are associated with work addiction, though there are a few common ones that were mentioned across the board. Then in 2009 to present, this is where there has been a creation of multiple scales that can be used to identify work addiction risks, and identify the negative consequences associated with work addiction. And these scales have been developed based on the conceptualizations that the researchers feel are the most prevalent. So the themes of the publications around work addiction. So here are some of the common themes. These themes are in chronological order. So as you will see, research around work addiction began with the consequences associated with work addiction. Oates looked at an individual. It was a case study that really highlighted the negative impact that an individual is having because of his work addictive tendencies. Then research sort of shifts into workaholism versus work engagement. These are 2 terms that are often related very closely and sometimes used synonymously. The issue with that is that this caused many researchers to view workaholism as a positive trait, and it really discredited the negatives that are associated with overworking. Then we go into scale development. As I mentioned, there have been a variety of scales developed to identify work addiction, and there has been a variety of conceptualizations used for those scales. Then finally, we go into correlations of work addiction. This is where we begin to identify the traits that are associated with work addiction and the common negative impacts that work addiction can have on the individual. Then finally, this brings us to the present, where we focus on problems associated with defining work addiction. One of the major problems in defining work addiction is that there is no universal definition. This has caused major issues in pushing this closer to a diagnosis, or even really into one understanding so that the research can be all in one cohesive piece. So, was identifying a research study worth it? It was absolutely worth it. What I learned through this process is that the understandings of work addiction have changed over time. The original understanding is significantly different than our current understandings of work addiction. Then I learned that there are a variety of definitions that have been used to define work addiction, all varying in the traits and qualities that they use, but overall attempting to define the same topic. Along with that, I learned about the many negative consequences that are associated with work addiction and the link that those consequences have to other diagnosable addictions that we currently recognize today. Along with that, I learned that the biggest issue in making work addiction a diagnosis is that lack of a universal definition. So the overall takeaways of a research thread. These takeaways emphasize the importance of understanding the history of the topic. We're able to understand where it started and how it got to become what it is today. This is important as we understand the different conceptualizations of the topic and the different traits that are used to define those understandings. Then it also emphasizes our current status. Where are we at in the research now? This is important as it allows us to gain an idea of where we want to go with our research. Along with that, it highlights the gaps in the literature. We're able to sort of identify where research is missing, what aspects of that topic are missing from the literature and that can be emphasized in our literature. And along with that, it allows us to find our goal and identity in researching this topic. For me specifically, I would love to be one of the researchers that pushes work addiction closer to a diagnosis and really does bridge that gap between understanding work addiction as a behavioral addiction, especially considering gambling addiction has been included in the DSM-5.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jihyun Choi, and I'm a third-year doctoral student at The Ohio State University. When I took this course, Research Identity in Counselor Education, we had several assignments that we need to do, and one of them was to interview a researcher. So this video is about the testimonial of that assignment. And for this assignment, we were supposed to reflect on the researcher's own understanding of his or her development as a researcher. So I chose Dr. Dong-il Kim as my interviewee. He is my master's advisor. He is a professor in educational counseling program at Seoul National University in Republic of Korea. And he is serving as a director for College Counseling Center. He is taking multiple roles. So he is a president, counseling professor, and directors for multiple projects. The reason that I chose him as my interviewee is that he is a very productive researcher. So for example, he published around 30 standardized psychological instruments or scales, and he worked with around 50 books and book chapters, and he published 300 or more articles. So I asked multiple questions to him, and he was generously answered all of my questions. And the first question was about from when he was interested in research. And actually that was from his undergrad. So looking back, my undergrad, what did I do? But at that time, he was already interested in what education is, what pedagogy is, and he was interested in the difference between natural science and social science, and how we could study education and pedagogy. So basically, he was interested in the identity of our field. And the next question that I asked is about how his life was like as a researcher in counselor education. And I figured out that he was responsive to societal events at the time. So for example, after he earned his degree at the University of Minnesota, he came back to South Korea. And there was a tragic accident at the time. One of the huge bridges was collapsed, which was very sad. And PTSD became an issue in our society. And he was involved in that research project. So his research interest in PTSD became into resilience, and his research interest in game addiction that was evolved into smartphone and internet addiction. So I was able to see his research threads. And the next question that I had is, when thinking about the future of our field or what is needed, and he told me that we researchers need to listen to the voices from the field. So our field will ask pragmatic questions to us. So we need to listen to the underserved population, and we need to think about the technology. And finally, I think he told me that I need to think about my own strengths. So how I could commit to our field as a researcher. So for me, that was really inspiring. And personally, I asked a question about how I could manage all the things in my plate. So research-wise, he was really productive, but at the same time, he taught multiple classes and he served as multiple roles. So I was interested in how I could handle all of this, for now and in the future as well. And he told me to become proactive. So instead of being chastened by multiple deadlines and roles and due dates, I need to be proactive. So be prepared in advance and spread out all the tasks in the appropriate places. Actually, what he told me at the very end of the interview was really inspiring. So he told me that when looking back, he realized that he chose to be busy. So actually, for me, that was mind-blowing. So actually, I chose to become a doctoral student. I came to this program and I chose to teach classes and do research. But sometimes I forget about that and I feel, anxious and nervous and miserable about that. But actually, all of that is my choice. To sum up, through this assignment, interviewing a researcher, I was able to learn the researcher's educational background and career trajectory, as well as research trajectory. And I was able to think about the things, considerations for my research in the future. And personally, it was so helpful for me that I was able to think about how to become a successful researcher and a successful graduate student. So basically, interviewing a researcher itself is really inspiring. So I hope you, as a faculty member or a future faculty, I hope you could think about how to implement or apply this kind of task, interviewing a researcher into the curriculum or into the program, so we could foster more researchers in our field. Yeah, thank you for listening to my presentation, and I hope you could enjoy our rest of the presentation. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Terry Blake. I am a third-year doctoral student in the School Psychology Department here at The Ohio State University. In this course, one of the assignments was to interview a researcher. Now, with this being a counselor ed course, the idea was to interview a counselor ed researcher. However, I have a background in psychology. I was given permission and encouraged, actually, to interview someone with a psychology background as well. The purpose of the assignment was to gain an understanding of the development that it took to become a researcher and the overall journey. I had the honor of interviewing Dr. Noni Gaylord Hardin, who is currently a professor at Texas A&M. I'll share more with you about the gems and the words of wisdom that she shared with me during the interview process. Dr. Noni uses one of my favorite words, passion. She shared with me that she didn't know the road would lead her to becoming a researcher. It was not a goal. Her goal was to practice as a psychologist. However, after a few internship experiences, she learned that that wasn't quite so her passion after all, and she was okay with that. She shared with me that it was in a social emotional development class that she discovered her passion. She found her why. And so she made me comfortable with knowing that it's okay for me not to know whether or not I want to be a researcher right now. But what is important and what is actually a positive thing is that I know what I do love and I know what I don't love. Discovery happens that way. Passion happens that way. The most important thing is to follow your passion. There were so many lessons and words of wisdom shared during the interview process. But there are a few that resonated with me more than others. Dr. Noni said to me, "We think we are in the business of being right, but actually, we are in the business of being wrong." She said, "Terry, become comfortable with being wrong. Because you'll have a research question, you'll have a why or a what. And then you find yourself asking another question to follow up with that question and another question. And as you find out, you're wrong most of the time. And that's why you have multiple questions from that one. It's not, the goal shouldn't be to be right. The goal should be to embrace curiosity." She also shared with me that mentorship does not have to be formal. We talked a lot about mentorship in the class, and for a second there, I thought mentorship was, I go out and I find this person who shares similar research interests as myself. But she shared with me that's not it. Sometimes you have a mentor and they are 100 miles away and they don't know that they're your mentor. but there's something that you get from them that you don't get from others. There is something that they share with you or that resonates with you, but it's not a formal contract. It's not a formal relationship. It doesn't have to be formal, and you shouldn't seek everything in one mentor. You should have multiple. And then lastly, she said, Terry, you are too unique to be boxed in. You don't have to just be a researcher. You can be a psychologist who does research. You can be a teaching professor. You can be someone who does private practice. That's okay. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Embrace the curiosity. Embrace the uncertainty, because there's beauty in that. Seek opportunities to grow. So whether it's presenting, whether it's doing research, writing with others on different teams, seek those opportunities. Network when you are at these conferences. And most importantly, live on purpose. That is so important. Living on purpose. Don't just go through life without a plan, or without inspiring someone or making someone smile, or doing research. If you're a researcher, your research should be to give voice to the voiceless so that others can be heard. These are some of the lessons that Dr. Noni taught me during the interview, and I will continue to take them with me and share them with others.
Hi, my name is Patrick Cunningham, and I'll be talking about joining a research team. So as a class, one of our assignments was to build a research team together so that we could gain that experience and really see a project through from beginning to end together as a group. And Dr. Darcy gave us a couple of different ideas, which provided us with a place to start. But we had to take a lot of time, and we had a lot of time and space to talk as a large group about our different ideas. And then we also broke into smaller groups to research specific components of our topic. And this was a really interesting experience for all of us, I believe. But I think it's one of the experiences from the class that's going to stick with me the most. And I think the reason for that is that perhaps maybe according to traditional views of the word, we failed. We came up with an idea. We wrestled with it a lot. We started doing a lot of research and literature reviews, and we were really digging into the topic. And after several weeks of work, of really kind of pouring into this topic, we realized that we were going in the wrong direction, and that it wasn't something that we could easily just correct. It was something that we were doing. We were headed in a direction that we weren't comfortable with as a team. So it was something that we needed to just completely abandon altogether. So, you know, if the goal was for us to see a research project through from start to finish, we technically failed. But that wasn't really the goal. The goal was to give us the experience of being on a research team, the experience of reevaluating, pivoting. Those are things that are very natural and a normal part of this process of being a researcher. And what was most important was that we had this experience where we had to wrestle with it, where we had to talk it over, where we had to ask difficult questions about our research and our motivations for conducting this research. And then we all had to come together and form a consensus as a team. So I think we all really learned a lot of valuable lessons from this process. And I think it helped for all of us to gain confidence in ourselves as researchers, because we learned about what it takes to get an idea off the ground. So we're actually now kind of still continuing as a research team. The class, even though the class has been over for months, the group of us, we're still continuing as a team. We're at a very different place now from where we started. We went back, we pivoted, we went to a completely different idea. But I think that that experience of wrestling through things really helped us a lot as a team. So I think that we can gain even more experience and continue to work together, which I'm excited about. So with this experience, some of the main things that I learned is that, research really just begins with an idea. And it's something that, I think this ended up being where we were stuck. So that was a really interesting point. But again, really valuable lessons came from that. I think another important component of this, the way that we did this project, was that we had guidance from an experienced researcher, someone who has been through this process many numbers of times, and that was really helpful for us. We also, had the opportunity to search through existing literature and understand the problem. And again, that's where we spent the vast majority of our time, and it was there that we realized that we were headed in the wrong direction. So this isn't a part that can be skipped over, and I think it's really important for doc students, for people that are developing the identity of a researcher, to have this experience of searching through the literature and really wrapping your brain around the problem. We also learned to develop a plan, but then also to continually reevaluate. And I think I already talked about that at length. But ultimately, again, the experience of being on this research team really demystified the process. And it helped to build self-efficacy. So even though in some regards we didn't end up where we were hoping to go, I feel way more confident as a researcher because now I understand what this process can look like and what it should look like. So anyway, that was one of my most meaningful experiences from this overall course and the experience of developing an identity as a researcher.